Hey, thanks for joining. This is Jordan with Monterey Real Estate Photography, and I'm here to show you how to edit HDR Flash Ambient real estate photography. So this is the finished product here, the finished image after all the pictures have been edited in. So let's take a look at all the individual shots. So this is the 5 bracket HDR. This is after the kind of full bump and then some changes. And I did that based on Rich Baum photography. So it's just a little bit of exposure, a little bit of contrast, highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up, whites, 18, blacks -5, and then a little bit of texture, clarity, and then a little bit of dehaze, vibrance, and saturation. So that gives me this finished HDR. And then this is just a bumped up ambient shot. I don't think we'll end up using this, but we'll throw it into Photoshop just in case as well. You can tell it's a pretty crappy quality. We can go back down, and this is how dark it ended up being, but that's fine. So we'll bring that exposure back up, and we just use this as luminosity, but I'll get into that a little bit later. This is the flash shot that kind of approaches the right side, and then so a little bit brighter flash shot, and then on the left side, and then all the way back because I wanted to illuminate this back spot, which is the dining room. And then there's me on the left side, and that's trying to really blow out this right side as well. And then to get kind of some realistic shadows over here, because that's where the light would be coming in from the outside. And then, same thing, trying to get the shadows on the left side. And then that is the finished image. I did get this window pull that you don't really need it for this one, but we'll use it anyways. So I'm going to collect all of these images. So highlight all of them, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. While Photoshop is loading, it's worth mentioning that on each one of these, it's important to have the all of them not be leveled. So just have the transform just completely off for every single one of them. And I did just a lens profile correction, so it only does the removing chromatic aberration and enabling the profile corrections, just so all the images are exactly the same, because when it gets brought into Photoshop, you're going to want them to be as aligned as possible, and then you're going to align them again to make sure that there's no ghosting, just that, there's no, ghosting, if you know what that is. So here we are in Photoshop. So first things first, I have an action that auto aligns everything. I have it set to F3, but if you don't know how to set an action, you'll go to select all layers, and then edit, auto align layers. And then that'll do its thing, and that'll just make sure that all of the images are properly aligned. So it'll bring up this little window, and then you'll hit OK, but I'm gonna exit out of that, and I'm just gonna hit F3 because that does the same exact thing for me. So I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. So I watched so many different videos, be it Flux Media, that guy's awesome, Rich Baum Photography, that guy's awesome, Nathan Cool Photo, I watched a lot of his tutorials. There was another guy, Steven, I think his name was, I can't remember his channel name, but I watched so many videos trying to figure out how to do proper Photoshop editing, and compositing is what I've learned that it's called. And I ended up learning a good chunk from all of these, but it was still way too complex for me. So I dumbed it way, way, way down. And then, so my workflow kind of became, I go to these shoots, and then I take just a 5 bracket HDR, just in case, because I'm fairly new to using flashes at all, Flash Ambient. I take the HDRs as a backup, so that's why I have the Flash Ambient HDR mix, and I just like the way it comes up, and it's good practice. Yes, it does take longer to edit these pictures, but I'm a firm believer in the more that you do it, the quicker you'll get at it, and the more things that you'll learn, and so that's why I started at a much dumbed down level. So let's kind of push right through this. So right here we have all of our layers, and we can see all the different ones, and we don't have to worry about aligning them where we want quite yet. It does help to label them, but I'm just going to go through and I'll explain things as I go. First off, I'm going to duplicate the HDR and you'll see why we do that later, but I'm going to label this as color because one of them I'm going to change. So the one that I have as color, I'm going to change it in this drop down to color, and then immediately change that opacity to 40%, and I'm just going to get rid of that. And then this I'm going to actually change to luminosity mode, and that just gets the luminosity coming in correctly, which makes it look really, really nice. But the reason for both of these in conjunction is because if you just have luminosity, then it gets rid of the color, and if you just have the color, then it doesn't have as much nice luminosity. So I do that right off the bat. I only just started doing that on this shoot, so we'll go through and see which images that we want to use. So this one is my window pull, so I'm going to just say window pull, and then click and drag this all the way to the top, and then just get rid of that. So I'm going to start at the bottom. And when you're mixing these types of flashes, what you want to do is use lighten mode sometimes. So it really depends. So you can the modes that I use the most are normal, lighten, and then really that's it. Sometimes darken if you're doing like window pulls and stuff like that. So I'm going to start with lighten, and you can see it kind of gets this weird you can see me but barely. So I'm going to make sure I have my brush selected by selecting B, and then that my defaults are white and black. I had changed my color a little bit, so you can just hit D to reset that. You should be able to hit D to reset that. For some reason it's not working, but so that's reset. I have my brush active. So before you do anything, you're going to want to, if you're on a PC, you're going to do Alt-click Add Layer Mask. You're going to want to merge these two images together. So I'm going to hold Alt-click on here, and then I'm going to just kind of erase myself as much as possible. And I can already tell that this is going to be a little bit annoying in lighten mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to normal, and then that'll just get rid of me entirely. I have my flow set to 4%. You can have it a little bit higher. I just like painting things in, and you get it's a little bit more forgiving rather than if you just do it straight to 100%, then you're if you screw up you have to go back, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass. So I get rid of me over here, so now you can't see me right there, and you can't see me right there. So then I've got these two shots that are mixed with you not being able to see me. So I'm gonna go through here. You brought me back just a little bit, which I don't want. So I'm gonna stop that. Get rid of me right there. You can also go a little bit more fine. I'm gonna bring this up just to make this a little bit faster. Okay. So get rid of that. And bring my flow down back again. So this is just kind of massaging the different light in, so you have a nice evenly exposed, because this is the right flash and the left flash. So this is good enough for how it is right now, and every step doesn't need to be perfect right off the bat. So then I have these two layers selected. I'm going to do Control E to merge them, and then I'm going to enable the top layer, and then I'm going to do a layer mask hide, which is the same thing, which is Alt click right here. It'll create that. I'm going to make sure I have my brush selected, and then make sure that I am not visible. And this just kind of balances everything out. And I'm hitting X to switch back and forth between black and white, so that it's getting it's either adding or subtracting. I'm going to make sure these shadows aren't as crazy on here, and then I just flip back and forth. And if I like the way that it looks, then I keep it. If I don't like the way that it looks, then I go back. So I'm going to get rid of these kind of harsh shadows right here, and that'll end up probably being hidden with a another layer. So I like this shadow right here, but I'm just going to make it a little bit less obvious. See how that looks, and it's all about just kind of changing a little bit at a time. just seeing if you like the way that it looks. So I think I like that. I'm going to go ahead and merge those together. And then this one in the back is the light that I want to illuminate. So I'm going to do a layer mask hide, which is Alt-click, and I'm going to change this to lighten. And then just bring in all that. You just want to do a little bit at a time. I don't want those harsh shadows on here, so I'm going to try and make sure that it's as realistic as possible, while still kind of bringing in the light from over here. Oops. But we don't want these harsh kind of crazy colors. We just want the brightness coming in from the back. Okay, that's decent enough. Let's bring my flow down and just kind of paint over this and see how we like it. Get rid of those harsh shadows, bring that light up. Bring that light up just a little bit more. And it's just adding and subtracting until you like how it looks. I'm going to shift click both of these layers, Control E to merge them, and it's starting to look pretty good. So now it's more about fine tuning. So this has a lot of harsh shadows, and you kind of, the idea is, and this was a really cloudy, overcast day, you can tell by just a ton of rain outside. So the light would be coming in from the windows. So this kind of is following the correct ones. But now, I mean, the image looks pretty good so far. So now it's just adding, more details. So always layer mask hide, and then I'm going to just do lighten and see how I like it. And then kind of gets rid of those shadows. See how that looks. Brighten that up a little bit. Bring back the shadow down there. And then brighten up the top for a little bit more definition. That added some weird looking stuff right there, so I don't like that. Okay, that's a little bit too bright over there. We don't want that to get blown out. And let's see, a little bit more definition down there. Get rid of that shadow right there. And again, I'm just hitting X to flip back and forth between adding and subtracting until I get an image that I really, really like. So I like this so far. Now I'm going to merge those together and see what's the next layer. Okay, more of the same, so just get some more details. I'm going to also still be in lighten mode and see what that changes. Okay, so that really brings out this, which is really, really nice, but I don't want that harsh shadow, so I'm just going to paint just a little bit at a time. And bring in the light. I'm just getting more and more details at a time. So that's fine right there, and that's starting to look really, really good. And what's next? So this one, let's see. Let's just change it to luminosity and see what it looks like. So obviously that's extremely ugly. So change that just down to 40, and let's see how that looks. So that just kind of evens everything out a little bit. So let's change it to lighten and see how that looks. But that's okay. I like it. So I like the way that that looks. So I'm going to just mix those together. And the next one that we're dealing with is our ambient shot. So I'm going to change this to luminosity. And I always do the ambient shot, the HDR shot. I change them both into luminosity mode to get more details. And then I also, like I did in the beginning of the video, I duplicated the HDR and then changed it to color mode. So obviously this is super ugly, so change this down to about 40%. And that just gives a little bit more realistic light profiles, a little bit more realistic colors, and you can even bring this down and then see how it's going to look. So I just do a little bit at a time. See how I like it. 17%, that's fine. So we're going to mix those together. And luminosity mode again with the HDR. Oops. Always make sure you're selecting the correct layer before you start going crazy. Okay, so I do like what this is doing, so I'm going to keep that. And if I don't like what a layer does, or if I think an image is useless, I'll just get rid of the picture. I just won't use it in the final composite. I tend to overshoot because I'm still new at this, so if there's a picture that I end up not needing, I just won't use it. Sometimes I'll try and mix together everything just because I like the creative process, and it flexes the Photoshop muscle that I've only been using for 3 months. So now it looks a little bland, and it does have a good amount of color, but let's see what the what this layer does when we enable it. So that brings in even more color, which makes it look a little bit more realistic. It kind of brings down the floor color, and then kind of evens out the ceiling. Kind of has this weird yellow tint to it, so the color kind of just evens that all out a little bit. So I like what that's doing. I have the opacity at 40%. Merge those layers together. Then we have our window pull. So this one, you can do a layer mask hide. So you put that into darken mode, it changes the window and not everything else, so it makes it look good. So we can just, I mean, that really didn't do anything besides just change that a little bit. So that's fine. So that looks good. So there is the finished product. So we'll Control S and then Control W, so that saves and closes it. And then we're going to come back into Lightroom. And then here is the edited picture after Photoshop. And then I just have my finishing touches, which levels it. And then I don't really like using the auto. I usually stick with just the level. And then, auto can sometimes, sometimes it looks better, sometimes it looks worse. Just try it with every single picture. Just either or, whatever looks better. And my finishing touches is, so it's the leveling, and I always do constrain crop. When you auto align the layers, there will be a lot of kind of leftovers, so you'll have to crop it in anyways. So you might as well hit level and then do constrain crop, and it'll just get rid of all that crap. And then I have just a little bit of exposure that comes in, a little bit of texture, a little bit of clarity, and then getting rid of some dehaze, and then some vibrance and saturation. So let's compare the picture that I just edited to the one that I posted on Reddit. Yeah, pretty similar. So let's bring up side by side. Pretty darn similar. I'm happy with it. So that's how I do my HDR Flash Ambient mixes. I just like the way that they look. So with as I'm looking at it here, so what I did with this one, I remember, is I brought in the brush because I didn't like having any color in the ceiling. So I brought in the brush, I brought the saturation down, and then I just painted over it. Just painted over it. And you can see really what it's doing. And then that's too big, so I can bring that down and just get rid of it, so I still have the color in the windows and on the grass, but then I don't want it up in the ceiling. And then I can also bring up the exposure a little bit, which makes it a little bit more bright. And then creating a new brush, bring up the exposure, and then I think I just painted the exposure up a little bit over here. That's a little bit too much, so let's bring that down. Hit done. All right, now let's look at them side by side. Okay, so that looks pretty similar. I honestly like the image that I just did on the video more than the one that I posted online. So that came out really, really good. I'm going to do more of these videos just as I kind of perfect my process and get a little bit quicker at it. And then, yeah, hopefully this helped you. So this was how to do HDR Flash Ambient mixing together in real estate photography. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.